I heard everything growing up, all the fights, all the arguments. I moved numerous times as a child because of foreclosure, being evicted. We were homeless for a point of time, living with friends. There was food scarcity, and it's hard because upon talking about it, I feel like it's like I'm blaming my parents and I'm shaming them for it, when in reality, they did have such a hard start at life.
Don't give up. It's always at times where things just seem hopeless, and we had a future and a vision that we were kind of going towards. I think even before we had met, just that resiliency that Krista had to provide a life for her kids, and even me when I was trying to find my career and my job, to just holding on to that hope and then not giving up, and then finding the opportunities that come by your way. Going back to some of the poverty stuff, it can be just how destructive, like a vicious cycle that you can get stuck in.
Don't think it's too late, because that's when you give up. And giving up is throwing in the towel, and you're acting as if it's game over, you're done. And it's like, you're not done until you're dead. And I don't want to give up, because that also means I'm giving up on our dreams and our life and our future. And there are times where it's gonna feel hopeless. And that is just part of anything in life.
Welcome to Catching Up to FI, a podcast on mindset, money, and life for late starters of any age on their journey to financial independence. I'm Bill, and I'm a late starter.
I'm Jackie, and I'm also a late starter, and we're your host. We're here to help you on your journey to financial independence, no matter where you're starting.
We're going to talk to experts, other late starters, and explore topics related to our mission.
Join us as we catch up to FI together.
Hello, and welcome back to Catching Up to FI. This is an exciting day, Jackie, because this is a first for us. We are doing a case study with friends of ours from the FI community. What do you think? You were involved in this case study. Are you excited?
Yeah, I was. So I have a special heart for Krista. She was our case study at EconoMe. And that was new for EconoMe too, because that was the first case study that they had done live at EconoMe. So being a part of the panel and kind of seeing how everything came together with Krista, I definitely wanted to have her on the show, and I'm so lucky that she agreed to hang out with us on the show and go through the case study. And I think our audience will love the idea of a case study too.
Well, Ed wasn't there with her, but he's here with us today. Don't forget, this is a duo. So this case study involves both of them. So give us an idea here real quick, Jackie. Give us your introduction to their background so that folks get a sense of where we're going with this.
Yeah, well, like I mentioned, one of the highlights of the 2024 EconoMe was the live case study. It was on stage in front of 500 people. So why not? Well, we did have one brave soul to bear it all, and that brave soul was Krista Kim. She's also part of the Catching Up to FI community, so she is in our Facebook group. I see her often, and she really stole the show. So there was a panel of not one, not two, but three CFP professionals, including myself, an attorney, our friend Frank Vasquez, and a tax pro. So it's a lot of professionals that was working on her case, and we analyzed her family's finances, we assessed their current situation, and we offered her tips and strategies on how to help her family on their goal of reaching financial independence and retiring early. So her husband, Ed, we can't forget about him because, yay, we get him today. He couldn't be at EconoMe, but we're so glad that we were able to get him to join us for this interview. So Ed and Krista, they exemplify resilience, love, and the spirit of a blended family. At age 46 and 35, respectively, they have woven a rich tapestry of life experience into their journey together. Ed, a seasoned senior web developer, and Krista, an impassioned outreach specialist at a public library, form the cornerstone of their bustling household, which includes 4 boys. So they got a house full there. Their story is one of triumph over adversity. Krista, a determined single mom that grew up in poverty, she defied the odds with her unwavering courage. And that was a lot like my story as well. Our friend of the show, Frank Vasquez, who was also, like I said, he was a panelist, he describes her life as a map of a hero's journey. That's profound. If you didn't think he was capable of it, that's profound. Ed, he was shaped by the immigrant experience of his parents. He carried forward a legacy of hard work and resilience. Together, they faced and they conquered financial setbacks, finding solace and strategy in the FIRE movement. Over the last 5 years, Ed and Krista diligently rebuilt their foundation, prioritizing stability and security for their growing family. Beyond their professional pursuits, Ed finds joy in the intricate world of video games, while Krista unwinds with a good book in her hand, and I mean a lot of books. So Krista and Ed, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's good to be on.
It's very kind of you to join us. We're experimenting. We're experimenting with a case study because you fit our avatar. Your income is in that sweet spot of early to late six figures, and we'll talk about that. And the challenges you face of late starting speak to our audience as well. So we're here through your story to give our audience hope. Right, Jackie?
That's right. And while I was doing this case study the entire time, I was thinking about catching up to FI and how they really represent who we are talking to. So Krista, I'm so curious because we talked about it briefly, but you read a lot of books, and how funny it is that you work at a library. But when we say a lot of books, typically people mean 20, maybe 50. Bill, you read a lot. I don't know how many you read a year, but it's probably not as many as Krista. So Krista, how many books have you read, let's say, over the last year?
Over the last year, well, the last calendar year. So in 2023, I read over 200. I stopped keeping track.
Oh my
and then
God.
I'm somewhere around 100 right now. I don't unfortunately get to read as much now that I'm working more, but
Well, what are you reading? Are these boring personal finance books or what?
yeah, they're so boring. I read a mix of everything, fiction, nonfiction. It's just, I read lots of kids' books too, but I don't count those.
I want to know where you find the time. You've got 4 boys, you've got a really busy household, you're working. You also said you listen to 30 hours of podcasts a week. Do you sleep?
I read and I work and I take care of my family and I sleep, and that's it. I don't do really anything else. So while he may game and he enjoys his TV shows and movies for sure, I don't watch anything. I read. So very fast reader too, which makes a big difference.
Yeah, I knew you were that speed reader. Man, it takes me weeks to read a 200-page book, but you're like zooming through it.
Yeah.
So Ed, tell us about your gaming. So that's your love, right? Gaming?
Yeah, mostly the Xbox platform there. So kind of just grew up on it.
You play a lot with the boys?
Some we have, especially now that they were older. Like before, when they were younger, it's like they could only press one button and do one thing. But
you give them a fake controller to hold.
Yeah, now they're a little bit more coordinated, and they're probably will surpass me in the next like month or so. But yeah, mostly Xbox games, like first-person shooters and stuff like that. So.
Well, you're in tech. You work in the technical field. And we're going to hear a little bit about Krista's story, and we heard about it in the introduction, but we don't know Ed. I want to hear a little bit about Ed's beginnings with regards to, I heard about an immigrant upbringing and how that influenced your financial scripts and story. Take us back, Ed, and bring us up to the present.
Sure. So my parents were immigrants to this country, so that would make me a second generation in this country here. They came in, they were pretty much entrepreneurs. I mean, they had some jobs in the beginning, but they ended up becoming like small business owners. And they didn't really get into like corporate America, so I don't feel like they really got into the world of 401ks and retirement and things like that. They kind of made their own ways, like saving and just growing their businesses like that. And so I think in my own, like the idea of hard work, earning your keep, kind of trudging along, being resilient, kind of started from there. As I got older, I struggled a little bit to find a job out of college. I kind of didn't know like how I was supposed to find a job, how I was supposed to go about it. And so when I eventually ended up finding a pretty stable job, I didn't know much about retirement and all of that stuff, 401k and stuff like that. I'm just like, okay, we'll kind of do something like that. It wasn't more until when we were kind of being more serious about catching up to FI and trying to figure out where do we want to go. Like, I will give all the credit to Krista because she's our financial advisor of our family. So
I think you always contributed at least the match.
Yeah. I mean, that was definitely a no-brainer. My company offered a percentage match, and it's like, yeah, that's obvious. That was an obvious decision to do. But
I feel like that's not always obvious to everyone, though.
True.
So,
yeah.
Nobody tells you how a 401k works.
Yeah.
Fritz Gilbert said his boss took him aside when he started his first job and he said to him one thing. He said, max out your 401k. And that made all the difference. Nobody told me that. We're part of the lost generation, the silent generation, where things went from defined benefit plans to defined contribution plans. Yeah. And my dad, my mom, my first job, nobody told me that's what you need to do. It would have been that one piece of advice can transform your life. Did anybody hold your hand through this, Ed, and sort of educate you a little on finances, or were you all on your own?
I mean, finances in terms of like saving like that, but not really in terms of investing. We didn't even really have health insurance like when we were younger. And so we were lucky that nothing super major kind of happened to us. But I mean, like looking back on that, it was just, that's kind of like, wow, we didn't have that kind of insurance. And it's also another aspect of this is that my parents weren't super transparent about their finances too. So I didn't know a lot other than like either, we have enough, or, we're struggling and we're tight and things like that.
I think a lot of times, from what I've heard, his experiences later in his teen years and early adulthood with his parents and their finances was more so watching the struggle of people who spent money who no longer could uphold like the lifestyle, because as entrepreneurs, their income also changed and they didn't have a fallback too. So that was a bit of a learning experience.
Yeah, they went through their own adversities in terms of finances. They had businesses that took a major hit of some sort, and I had to figure out a different way to survive, basically.
But seeing everything they did go through is pretty amazing as well. So
absolutely.
So, Ed, where are your parents today? Do they live near you guys, or?
They're about an hour and a half away in the suburbs of Chicago. So.
Okay. And are they all right with their retirement?
Are they still working?
They recently retired, actually. So officially, they ended up selling their business and then was able to retire. So
we still don't know anything about finances, though, because they don't talk about it.
Yeah, my parents don't talk about it either. Do you think that selling their business was the biggest part of their retirement? Or and are they going to be secure? Because one of the biggest gifts my mother gave me, for example, and my father too, was she struggled with adversity in her 50s. They got divorced. She had to go back to work. She worked hard as a nurse until she was 70, but she's been financially independent and secure, not telling us exactly where all that comes from or how she's doing it, but she's frugal, and she's been retired now 16 years, and it's been no problem, and there's no worry for us. We've talked to other people where they have some economic outpatient care of their parents or siblings or something else, a weight they have to bear. Do you feel like that's going to be the issue with you and your parents, or are they, safe and secure?
I believe they're pretty safe. I mean, I have two siblings, so we're also kind of keep watching on them, but they are in their 70s, so they live frugally. They don't have a ton of expenses as well, so I'm not super worried about it.
And they worked until their 70s?
Yeah.
Yeah. So when do you guys plan on retiring?
Not 70.
Definitely not 70. Hopefully in 10 years. That is the goalpost. He'll be turning 55 and I'll be turning 44. So
do you consider yourself late starters?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Definitely.
Yeah.
We didn't actually start like fully contributing and maxing out anything until 2 years ago. And that was catching up in the middle of like 2022. So,
Wow. Thinking about the late start, it reminds me when you talked about your upbringing and that you grew up in poverty, which I did as well. And I felt like that was part of my late start because I wasn't exposed to that. The things you're exposed to when you're in poverty is just scarcity and all those
mhm.
things. So, can you take us back to when you were growing up and your childhood and what that was like? Maybe some of your first money memories?
Oh, yeah. My parents were also teen parents. So there's a bit of a trend in my family with that. So they definitely struggled starting out because they weren't prepared at 16 and 18 when they had my brother, and then 18 and 20 when they had me. So I watched them work really hard at low paying jobs for quite a while. My dad is an extremely hard worker. My mother is too. And I remember my dad just going, he worked in a factory for a number of years, and he would leave for work 3:30, 4 in the morning, and then come home 4 in the afternoon. And he'd be tired, but he'd still do everything with us. But money was always just never there. And I always heard the conversations. And that's the thing, like, I'm very careful. I'm very open with my kids, but I'm also very careful about what I talk around them because I heard everything growing up, all the fights, all the arguments. I moved numerous times as a child because of foreclosure, being evicted. We were homeless for a point of time, living with friends. There was food scarcity. And it's hard because upon talking about it, I feel like it's like I'm blaming my parents and I'm shaming them for it, when in reality, they did have such a hard start at life. I'm the first person in my family to get a degree. So, like, they don't have degrees to fall back on. My dad went back to school in his 40s. But on the other side, having experienced being a single parent myself as a teen, it's frustrating to see the financial decisions that they made, where there were things that maybe were purchased and prioritized that shouldn't have been, or they operated on the, well, we can afford the minimum payment, but then they stretched themselves so thin that something happened. So my education of money was a lot of, I knew what not to do. I still made a lot of the same mistakes because I still didn't know what to do. And I could only model some of the things that I learned growing up as an adult. But yeah, it's just, I love my parents dearly, but it just wasn't like the best example. So,
As a teen,
Yeah.
you had to survive. And we have folks out there in our community that have become single parents because of divorce. There's a large community of this. What did you do to survive? And you got your degree even while having one or two kids?
yeah, I got my degree while I had two. And like, the degree's a hard one because the way I had to get my degree was going to school online, but online schooling costs significantly more than traditional. But going to a traditional school full time meant I couldn't work full time. And as a single mom, I had to work full time. So it was sacrifice. And I worked full time. I did school at night while my kids slept. And I had no life. And then I met him when my kids were turning 3 and 2. And I don't know if I would have survived and been able to leap out of poverty even before marriage without his support and help, because he just jumped right into the trenches with me and would like babysit the kids for me on the weekends so I could work shifts on the weekends instead of during the week. And I could actually spend time with my children because they would live at daycare sometimes. There was one daycare in town that was open till 11 p.m. and I would get done with a closing shift at 10:30 and I would go pick them up at daycare at 11 o'clock at night, take them home, put them to bed, and go in the next day at 8 o'clock in the morning. Like, It was really rough.
Yeah, it makes you wonder how single moms make it. My daughter was 9 years old. So, Ed, do you have any brothers? Because Krista's saying some nice things about you there.
I do have a younger brother.
But
He's happily married.
there you go. Okay, I won't mess with that. But that is beautiful that you guys met each other and fell in love, and then you became a team. And Krista, what you're saying about your dad, it resonates with me so much because I think a lot of people, you hear them broadly putting like poor people in a bucket of they're lazy, they don't want to work. And you're talking about how hard your dad worked. My dad worked hard. So that is just not true in a lot of cases. You work your butt off, but there's just circumstances that put you there and it's kind of hard to climb out. And so, yeah. And like you're telling your story, you're like, you didn't want your parents to sound bad, but that's just how it was. And I felt that for a long time when I would describe my dad, it just seemed like I was almost complaining about how I grew up. They kept us safe. They put food on the table. So now I just talk about how he's my hero, but still explain how I was brought up. So I kind of see that conflict there. But it's so amazing that you were able to climb out and you found a very special partner, and that made a huge difference in your life, and I'm sure your kids' life and everything. So you guys are together now. How long were you together before you got married?
4 years. So, and we
4
were
years.
semi-long distance. We lived about 2 hours apart.
Yeah, something like that.
So he would drive up on weekends.
Aw, man, I'm liking Ed more and more.
Sometimes he would literally just drive up on weekends to watch the kids because I worked all weekend long. I barely saw him.
The sponsor of this episode is Abundo Wealth. We've talked about how helpful financial advice can be on the path to FI. Unfortunately, most of the industry is expensive and doesn't always have your best interests in mind. Our friends at Abundo Wealth are changing that. They don't sell any products. They teach you how to manage your own low-cost investments and provide expert advice. The service costs only $189 a month for ongoing one-on-one access to a financial planner. Abundo provides guidance to clients at all stages of the FI journey, helping you to clear about your goals and dreams and setting up the spending, saving, and investment plan to achieve them. And the best part is that everyone is welcome, even if you're starting from square one. Our listeners can get the best deal available for this awesome service. Normally, the first month costs $499 to get started. But if you sign up for your free intro meeting at abundowealth.com and mention Catching Up to FI, you can get that first month for just $189, a savings of over $300. That's abundowealth.com. Well, I mean, you guys are the epitome of resilience.
Yeah.
What amazes me is that we can take our trauma of our upbringing or the challenges of living with entrepreneurial immigrant parents, and hard work is a consistency here. Your parents worked hard, you've worked hard, and you've climbed out of circumstances that I can't even imagine. What would you say to our audience that feels the same way, that they don't think they can climb out of the circumstances of late starting?
I would definitely say don't give up. It's always at times where things just seem hopeless and we had a future and a vision that we were kind of going towards. I think even before we had met, just that resiliency that Krista had to provide a life for her kids, and even me when I was trying to find my career and my job, to just holding on to that hope and then not giving up, and then finding the opportunities that come by your way. Going back to some of the poverty stuff, it can be just destructive, like a vicious cycle that you can get stuck in. But being able to take advantage of the opportunities that come your way, and then also being able to not just work harder, but seeing how you can work smarter as well. You can work as hard as you want sometimes and still almost be in the same place, but reevaluating, looking at your circumstances, taking proactive action to see what you can do to change your circumstances and look for the brighter horizon.
I think you also have to recognize and realize, especially in this group, we are not the same as the regular FI group. And that's okay. But especially early on, especially before there was a catching up to FI group, it was so hard to not compare where we were, especially with Ed being 11 years older than me. And like, we have this tiny little retirement account and he's in his mid 40s and there's people that are 30 with just so much money. And we're just like, cool. So
I hear you on that one.
One of the
That's
reasons
for
we
sure.
started this group was because nobody spoke to us. Nobody spoke to the fact that everybody that gets it right are the people that are the influencers out there, the 20, 30, 40 somethings. And then I've got friends that are retiring in their 50s and I'm still slogging it out beyond burnout. And for the fact that you guys woke up early in some ways compared to our other late starters and have a plan to retire in 10 years when Ed's 55 and you're 45-ish, I find that incredible. I mean, what was the turning point for you that said we need, because you had a big debt story, you had some really big financial challenges, and maybe take us through the debt story, and maybe that leads up to where you guys flipped the switch and said, no, there's a better way.
Okay, I'll start at the beginning of the debt. You want me to do it?
Go for it.
So the beginning of the debt story starts not long after we got married. And we got married and had given birth to our third child. And we lost an income, which happened to be the child support. And he knew that he was going to be losing his job and be getting laid off for a number of months and did not disclose it, which was extremely frustrating. And then all of a sudden I got a notice from his lawyer that, oh, hey, he doesn't have a job anymore. They're trying to get me to like just terminate child support. And I was like, that's not how this works. But I was like, oh, he works in this specific field. He will be fine. He'll find another job. We'll just float ourselves on credit cards until that income comes back. Because that income at the time was about half of our disposable income, because Ed was making much less back then. And with insurance and everything, the take home was not that much. He did not get another job for over a year. And at that point, we had cycled so far in credit card debt. It was scary, just how deep we had gone into the cycle of, okay, well, we can put $20 of gas on this card and we can put $50 of groceries on this card. And I know that so many people out there live like that and can relate to this, because it is so easy to get into that, but it is so hard to get out. That was our big financial, like, we hit rock bottom. And I remember looking at Ed and I was like, I'm grateful for my child support. And I'm grateful that outside of that situation, he's for the most part pretty consistently paid. But I was like, I don't ever want to depend on this for our financial safety ever again, because it ruined us. It wrecked us financially.
Well, so what year was this, Krista?
That was 2016, ended 2017. Yeah, end of 2017.
Okay.
How much credit card debt did you get into? Where did you start?
We started at like maybe 10,000 and we ended around 70.
And then does that include, did you guys have student loans?
That doesn't include the student loans, but yes, we do have student loans.
Okay.
So,
and Krista, if I remember, your student loans, they were possibly going to be forgiven because you were at a for-profit school that was a part of that big lawsuit.
yes,
So-
I'm still waiting on that.
Okay. And I wondered if there was a status. So I just remember when you were talking about your early days where you were going back to school, you opted to go to an online school that costs more. So that was the for-profit school. Because okay, gotcha. Yeah, and there was a big reason for that lawsuit, and it's a shame it's still dragging on, but hopefully that will get resolved soon. So you're working on that. And Ed, did you have student loans as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so my
Story.
educational, yeah, it's kind of another story there, but I went to a regular university. My parents actually helped pay for that too. Obviously, they weren't in with the whole saving thing, but they weren't also really on board with the whole debt thing as well. So they were, I mean, a lot of credit to them. They were paying out of pocket for my education. Once I finished that education, I was kind of lost. I didn't know what I wanted to do, how I wanted to work and stuff like that. And then I ended up going back to school again. This was for a design school. And this was, again, it was similar as a for-profit design school, which I felt like really rounded out the talents that I started to kind of get into. But that also, I incurred a decent amount of debt with that as well.
That was very expensive.
So,
Yeah.
So did I understand correctly that over a period of a couple of years, you guys paid off $200,000 of debt?
Yes.
Wow. That's impressive.
How did you do that?
So part of that is a child support settlement that came in. And then another part of that is just massively increasing our income. So it's kind of a twofold. Like, we made multiple different moves. He got a promotion with a decent raise, and his income's gone up a decent amount. But it was also me realizing that, like, hey, we're a team. And even though I have enjoyed the years I've been home with the kids, if we're going to do this, I can't keep being home. And I have to contribute to our plan financially. So that's when I started working more flexible jobs. I worked at Amazon for 3.5 years, which was soul sucking, but it was income and it was flexible. So if the kids were sick, I could not go into work and use hours, and it didn't matter because no one actually truly depended on me to be there.
So, Krista, the child support that you mentioned, the lump sum that you got, so that was a result of no child support being paid to you that was owed to you. And then finally, when you got that worked out, it finally all came to you.
Yeah, he had some arrears payments that he had to make.
Wow. Congratulations on that, because some single parents, they never, ever get that child support that's owed to them. So I'm glad that you finally got that.
I have to give him credit for that. He has always paid for 16 years, except for that almost 2-year period. But he's not physically here. He's in a different state. So I have sole custody and everything. So he's not a part of my child's life, which was his choice, and that's fine. But I also don't think he truly knows the impact that he made. And I think about it as what if I hadn't been married to Ed? Like, sometimes I have that thought of, like, what if I hadn't been married and we hadn't at least had his income? Like, I don't even know.
Your kids still needed to eat. Your kids still needed clothes. They still needed all these things. But you, as the custodial parent, you're responsible for getting those things, whether you get the child support or not. So there's 2 years that you weren't getting the help that you should have had.
Yeah.
So kudos for you for getting that worked out.
You were living in financial insecurity. How did that feel?
Terrifying. I had so much anxiety, which, I mean, that was my life growing up, but it was terrifying for me. I don't know how it felt for you.
yeah, it kind of felt like just a sinking ship. I'd get the income, it was like, oh, it's a nice income, but like, we got to be smart about it. I got to make sure our bills are paid. It was the game of like, what do we need to pay off first, so we don't get more charges, so we don't get an over the limit kind of thing, so we don't basically kind of a stop the bleeding kind of thing.
Remember what we were doing with the checking account? We were, for a year of this time, we had 2 different banks, and one of them allowed overdraft protection up to $700, and we would bounce checks that we wrote to ourselves every 2 weeks just so we could buy diapers and pay the minimum payments on certain bills. And it just, I mean, that's a terrifying thing to go through. And a lot of it I felt like was also my own fault and not necessarily him. And he was just like an innocent bystander on this ship going down, because he also spent almost no money. It was even though we were joints in some of the shopping we did together, I felt like most of it was me who was swiping the cards and just, well, we can afford the minimum payment, like what I grew up with. And
well, it was, I mean, we both learned
yeah,
some harder financial lessons together, not just individually, collectively. And I think that's also part of what kind of contributed to the upswing. I remember you were getting more into minimalism a lot, and I feel like that had a good effect on the adverse effects of consumerism that we were both kind of falling into.
our consumption level was extremely high. We were buying just so much stuff. So
Wow. And it's just so amazing how some people have just had more adversities or more trauma than others. And it takes a lot because it's that mindset shift. And you guys have done a fabulous job of that. And I appreciate you guys sort of digging deep and sharing some of the things that you had to overcome to get to this point.
Yeah, for sure.
That brings up a question for me too. A lot of marriages break up because of this. The stress is so great that it splits things up. How did you guys stay together? It seems like you were in lockstep and joined arms. And to me, this is a story, not only a hero story, but a story of love.
yeah, I think that's funny because I look back and I'm like, man, this man took 4 years to propose to me. You don't do that to a single mom. But I'm grateful now that this man took 4 years to propose to me. And we spent 4 years commuting to each other. We never lived together before marriage. And we really built a strong foundation with each other as friends. Like, he is my best friend. And it's never been a, well, you did this. Or it's always just been a team of like, we'll get through this together. We'll fix it. Like, it's not my fault or his fault because we're married. And I mean, we're one, and that's how we plan on staying.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to break it down to like the whole, like it's your fault or his fault, the whole blame game there, that's where you start leading down towards that dangerous path.
Yeah.
But when you say, oh, we have our faults, we're not perfect people, we make mistakes. I bought things I probably shouldn't have as well, but we were growing together. We were learning together, going through minimalism, which I wasn't super.
He was very resistive.
But I mean, it had a good idea, and like that helped to understand the idea of contentment in what you have versus wanting the consumerism and the materialism and wanting all this stuff and being fulfilled through something like that. So going back to our relationship story, though, it's just we were growing together. We were growing as financial students going through this game of life here. So.
Oh, that's so sweet.
How did you find the FI movement? Was that, I mean, did you find it? And you said you had 2016 was the bottom. And then 2017, I guess, is when things started looking up. Who found it and when was that? And what kind of a difference did it make?
I found it. We started with Dave Ramsey, which I'm sure many of us have. And I mean, it's a good spot to start when you don't know anything. So,
and especially when we were drowning in debt too.
We went through Financial Peace University at our church. And then we got through that. And then it was kind of like, okay, so now what? And then I do what I do best. And I started Googling and digging. And I stumbled, I think, upon the Facebook group. And I think that was like 2019, something like that. And then that's when I went like deeper into it. And I don't remember when I came to you and I was just like, what if you retired early?
Yeah, and well, that kind of goes back to like my notions of work, and like I feel like I'm pretty good at what I do, and it's reasonable. But
You
I mean,
are
like,
very good at what you do.
thank you. But I mean, that's not what I wanted. That whole question of if you didn't get paid for it, like, would you still be working? It's good and it's enjoyable, and I can do it, but that's not how I wanted to live my life. At the end of the day, it's like I wanted to live with my family. We wanted to have experiences and things like that. Yes, I am career driven, but then it's a means to an end. I definitely resonated with that. When we started talking about the dreams that we had when we're not bound by time or money necessarily, but Like, what do we want to do? And that really, I think that really spoke to us on a deeper level.
Yeah.
So, Krista, when you said you found the Facebook group, was that in 2019? Was that the ChooseFI Facebook group?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that was a lot of our first.
I started binging podcast. So
Okay.
it was definitely me. I don't even know how many of the podcasts you've actually listened to, but he just hears recaps all the time from me anyway. So he probably feels like he doesn't have to.
Or she sends me episodes.
Oh, yeah. I send him episodes and I'm like, this one's a really good one. You should listen to it.
So do you speed listen to the podcast like on 1.5x or 2x?
Depends on who's talking, because there's some voices, when you speed them up, they sound really funny.
Right. I just started doing that. I'm like, ooh, now I'm the one that want to take the shortcut. So. Hey, Bill, I got my CFP credential a few years ago, but you had been talking about possibly getting yours, and you were so interested in that CFP level knowledge. Are you still interested in that?
Yeah, but I don't want the credentials. How do I do it, a little bit on the lighter version?
Well, I think I got just the thing for you. I got with my friends at the Boston Institute of Finance, and guess what? They have come up with a personal growth track curriculum that is for people that just want to expand their own knowledge. They don't need course credit, but they want that CFP level education. And it's going to be for a lot less than what you would normally pay for going for the CFP.
Well, do they have different programs? My schedule's a little off. Do I have to be live for classes, or how does it work?
I know you're a busy guy at the hospital all the time, but they have two options. They have self-paced courses that you can either take individual, you can just take tax if you want, or they have the instructor-led courses. So probably you'd like the flexible one. But the good thing is that you can learn on the go. Their whole program is mobile friendly, and you could use your iPad, you can use your cell phone, but they make it super easy. So I think it might be just for you.
It sounds like it. I'll check it out.
Yeah, just check out bostonifi.com/personal-growth. We'll drop it in the show notes, but it could be something that will help you up your game. So eventually you guys found the FI movement, you found Catching Up to FI, and then you heard about EconoMe. And I remember Diana Merriam, the founder of EconoMe, she threw it out. And well, she tossed around the idea. We chatted about it on the phone, actually. And I said, that's a great idea. We do that in Cincinnati at our meetups. But she threw it out to EconoMe attendees or potential attendees and said, hey, we're looking for case study subjects. And we need you'll be showing all of your finances. You'll be sharing all your numbers in front of a crowd of 500 people. So whose idea was it to apply and say, yeah, I want to do this?
100% mine. He was just like, okay.
And what motivated you to do it? What was, this is something that takes, we don't talk about money. We don't share our incomes. We don't share our expenses. This is something that sort of stays in the bubble of our castle most of the time. And you're opening yourself up to the wide world. And you're on this podcast today, opening yourself up to another 5,000 listeners. Why did you do it?
Because I do now talk about money and our income and everything. And I have been for a couple years now, locally, with friends, with coworkers, with people who will listen, because the community had such a big impact on me, but it also just lit this fire where I was like, why? Why do people not talk about these things? And why is it so taboo? It just makes me so angry sometimes, because if someone had talked to me 15 years ago or 10 years ago, like, the difference it probably would have made, even if I only absorbed a small amount of what they said. And the more comfortable I would have felt, because it's like, well, they're talking about it. Because I think most of us probably grew up with families and parents of, we don't talk about money. My kids, we talk about money. So they can't say that. And I'm very proud of that. But I also looked at Ed and I was just like, I don't know who all applied, but they're probably going to be these really amazing and awesome stories. And I would love to hear some of them someday. But what if we applied? Because we're going to be one of the most real life freaking case study stories that they might get. I don't know, because I don't know who all is going to apply. But I felt like our story was so relatable. It was so real life. And maybe that's what people need to hear and see now instead of the end result stories. So
Yeah, I was on the panel and we had to, it was 5 of us. We had to look through the applications and we didn't know if anybody would be brave enough to want to do this, but we did have, I think, maybe 10 or so. And it was unanimous, your case study. It was unanimous because there was just so many moving parts. It wasn't perfect. You were kind of newer to FI, so that we saw a lot of potential opportunities and discussion points that a lot of the probably other attendees would find valuable. So we had a great time working with you, and we all met with you a few times, right? Hopefully we didn't take up too much of your time, but this panel of 5 people or whatever would get together and meet with you. So it takes a lot of time to sort of dig into this stuff, and you have so many questions, but you guys did an amazing job of putting everything together and helping us understand some things that didn't make sense. So it was great. And we were just hoping that you wouldn't get to EconoMe and say, oh no, I can't do this in front of 500 people. I'm done. So we tried to keep a backup just in case. But yeah, you were the perfect one. You're brave enough to do it. So if you guys don't mind, we want to go through the case study a little bit. And I would encourage everybody that's listening to this episode and our community to consider doing your own case study. So we're going to include a link to the blank presentation, the blank case study that Krista and Ed had to fill out. And maybe you can do it with a group that you're in, or maybe you can just do it within your family. But it's a wonderful exercise. So for the people that are on YouTube, I'm going to share my screen, but we will verbally talk through some of these things. And all of this will be familiar to you. But this was the same exact PowerPoint or presentation that we use at EconoMe. So if you attended EconoMe, you've probably already seen these numbers. And maybe by the time this airs, the video will come out.
Love it. I mean, to do this, I would encourage everybody to go to YouTube right now and watch this, because you're going to learn what you need to do to see where you stand from a net worth statement, from an expense report, from a savings rate, and then reverse engineering your goals from 45 to 55 to retire. And they did this, and I think it gives them hope to know that, geez, now that we've woke up, I don't have to wait till 65 and grind it out. So, Jackie, take us through the numbers. You're the numbers person.
Yeah, well, the first slide that I have, to me, the beginning of any financial conversation or financial planning is your goals. What are your goals? How can we try to work with you without that? So your goals, and Krista and Ed, let me know if any of this has changed since you did the case study. But Ed, you would be 55 and Krista would be 43. And that's about 10 years from now is when you guys are wanting to retire. That's one of your big goals. And then your other goal is college funding for 2 of your youngest sons, which would be $10,000 each for 4 years. So that's, $10,000 per year for 4 years. Okay, so those are the goals. I mean, I think there was a few that other ones that we talked about, but these were the big ones. Has any of that changed, Krista?
No.
Or Ed? Okay. All right. So here we have a net worth statement. Bill, you want to take us through that?
Well, you have your assets and your liabilities, and we look at their assets column. We see that they have cash equivalents, cash on hand. It looks like they have a high yield savings account with their emergency fund in it, which is a critical piece, right? And
Yes.
their invested assets, they have a brokerage account, they have Ed's 401k, and they have 2 Roth IRAs. And there's their total too, when you look at the YouTube. And they're maxing things out. And if you look at their savings compared to their total gross income, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, they're saving 24 or 25% right now. Is that correct, Ed and Krista?
We're technically actually saving more now that I have the new job, because
Yeah.
at the time when we did this, we were using the end of year, so 2023's, but I do also have the pension and I have a 457B. So I have more in the retirement assets that are also getting maxed out.
So this is only improving as far
Yes.
as your asset sides. So Krista, when did you start your new job?
I started it in February, mid-February.
Okay.
So
And is that going great?
it is.
Yay, congratulations, because it was March when we had EconoMe and you were just starting.
Yeah.
And yeah, I was excited to hear about how your job was going. And it's at a library. So my goodness, you couldn't make a more perfect marriage. Of course.
I bring home so many books.
Yes, yes. So that's the asset side. So
And on the other side, they have their liabilities, right? And they still have some credit card debt that may be revolving. So that's something I'm sure they're working on. Maybe that's changed since the case study, which was now several months ago. And then they have their long-term liabilities, and they still have auto loans and a couple of student loans and their primary mortgage. And if you total up their assets and liabilities, their net worth at the time of the case study was $290,000. So that's a great place to start. And then you got to reverse engineer with your savings rate where you're going to be in 10 years. Can you tell us maybe what your FI number is that you need to get to cover things?
So we'll be probably decreasing our spending in retirement, just because we will sell our house and downsize when we no longer have kids. We don't actually have that big of a house. We live in a 3-bedroom as a family of 6, but it's still going to be too large for us when we're alone. And we'll buy a home in cash, because the home is a huge part of our monthly expenses right now, just because the taxes and insurance are extremely high where we live. So that's a huge part of the plan. I think we've landed somewhere on the $75,000 a year without the home, but then we would need $100,000 a year with the home. So somewhere between the 1.8 to $2 million, because we want to travel.
yeah. So Krista, how are you doing on the credit cards? Is that still there? And was this a 0% card?
It's a 0% until March of next year.
Okay.
And it's still there because it's so hard to pull out the money from the high yield that's making almost 5% and pay it on something that's 0. It's a mind game thing.
Well, Bill may disagree with me, but I think that's a smart thing to do. And I may have shared this tip with you, but it's probably helpful for everyone else. If you have a 0% card, and sometimes that is a good way to take care of a credit card if your credit's still good and to get it paid off, but you always need a date on it. So obviously these go until typically 12 months or 18 months. But if you when you're doing the bill pay, if for the nickname of the account, you nickname it the day or a month before the 0% promotional rate expires, so that you get it paid off about a month before then, and you don't just forget about it and hope that you remember when it's due. Mm-hmm. So you clearly know exactly when that 0% ends. And I don't know that I would pay that off any sooner for 0% unless it was bothering you. So then it becomes a psychological question. So Bill, you think she should go ahead and pay off the credit card?
You're more the math person. I'm more the emotion person.
Yeah.
That's kind of our shtick. But I understand. When you work the math, as long as you have a plan for paying it off at that time, that's great. What does your debt plan look like compared to your investing and savings plan now?
So, we're investing, we're maxing out his 401k. I won't hit the max on the 457 this year just because of when I started in the year. And then when I started it, I didn't start it until May, end of April or May. It took a while for them to actually officially start my contributions, which was frustrating. But I will be maxing out mine. So both of those will be the 23,000. And then I have the pension, and we're doing the Roth. And then everything else gets dumped towards the car loan right now after the investments. So we pay our investments first, and then we have all our little expense buckets, and then everything else extra is going towards the car.
So do you have sinking funds? Did I hear that correctly, with expense buckets?
We have some, not as many as you, but we have a few, and we have multiple different bank accounts. So I like using different accounts for different things. It just makes it easier and cleaner.
Well, it sounds like you have a clear plan. Do you know when you plan to have your debt paid off?
It should be within the next like 12 months or less. It depends on how much certain bonuses end up being and if there's any raises next year. But I also refinanced it, so I cut the interest by 3%, and that's going to make it go a lot faster.
Well, I love the plan of saving first, actually, and you're got a hybrid plan where you're doing both, and that's what I do. Actually, I call it reverse budgeting, where as long as I've maxed out my savings to the point where it hurts a little bit, and I have enough left over to cover expenses, that I think is a great plan. How do you guys budget? Do you do it that way, or do you follow the YNAB folks with the zero-based budgeting? What do you do?
We reverse budget. We used to do very strict budgeting when we were lower on the income side, like under six figures, but I find reverse budgeting to work best, especially the closer you get to the 200,000. The easier reverse budgeting is because your income is so large. I mean, ideally, there shouldn't be a reason why you can't max out a $23,000 retirement account, in my opinion. No one come for me with pitchforks, but it's so much easier to pay yourself first than to pay yourself third or fifth. Like, it's just easier to take it off the top. And then what you have left is what you have left. I mean, his take-home pay for his checks is like 50% of what he grosses because of how much we throw in. So, but we're so used to it.
Yeah, that sounds familiar. And you just get used to whatever's left. And as long as you're not depriving yourself, obviously you have 4 kids that you're looking out for as well. And it's that hedonic treadmill. We end up just consuming all of our raises and things like that, but it doesn't have to be that way. You just get used to it. So I was kind of doing the same thing. And that is what that's your fuel right there that will get you to where you're trying to reach that financial independence. So, Bill, we're looking at this income and expenses here, and we talked through some of them already, but you've got, so both of you guys' income. So the 32,000, that's what you're making now, Krista, and Ed, a little over 100,000. And I like that you've included what you're investing. So you've got your 401k, you've got your pension, you've got even the taxes. I think that's important as well. Some people forget about the taxes. And then you've got your Roth contributions on the deduction side, or what you're saving and investing. And
on the expense side, what I like is they go through all the standard stuff: mortgage, housing, utilities, and then their debt service. But then on the next page, we see their percent allocation to things. And I want you to take us through that, Jackie. And how does that compare to sort of maybe our average audience member? Do you think that these percentages are appropriate, or would you look at things a little differently?
I think that they're appropriate. And I'm wondering, Krista and Ed, do you guys use an app, or how do you do your budgeting? Well, you said you do the backwards budgeting, so you don't use like an app or anything to try to do line item by line item?
I do still track because I'm totally a nerd and I love numbers. So I have an Excel spreadsheet that I track on, but I also just love pen and paper, like, so much.
Okay, so there you go.
That's the fun part coming out.
Yeah, and it's like whatever works for you. Like, I don't use an app either. If the pen and paper works for you, then do that. If a spreadsheet, don't make it hard on yourself. Do what's comfortable to you. The whole idea, right, is to be able to look at these numbers and being able to see the percentage allocation and the dollar together. It kind of put things in sync. Like, for anyone that's just listening, for example, your savings rate is about 25% of your expenses. And then your housing is about 27%. So that just kind of gives you a sense of where the big things are. And it's great that the savings part is one of the biggest pieces. And then food is 12%. And then you've got the other big ones up here. But it's kind of neat to see the percentage because, for instance, if there's a vehicle taking up 20% or 30% of your income and that represents 30% of your expenses, that's a lot.
We used to be there. I think our vehicles used to take up that much back in the day.
And it definitely, like, having it written down or laid out in paper like that gives it more definitive kind of feeling. Whereas if you know it in your head, it's kind of like, oh yeah, I kind of spend something around that, but like having that definitive there is like, yeah, especially with the percentage of it. And it's like, wow, if you don't do that regularly, it's like, you can almost play a mind game with yourself and deceiving yourself into how much you're actually spending like that.
And we've used YNAB before, and I think it's important for everyone to track at some point in their journey, because you think you know what you're spending and you are extremely wrong. Everyone is wrong on what they're spending. And we were wrong. But it forces you to become honest with yourself, because if you're lying to yourself. And I mean, what good are you doing? So
yeah, and that's why I'm saying this whole case study thing is just such a great exercise. So some of the important numbers that anyone should keep and know is your net worth, what your FI number is, your income, and your expenses. At minimum, you want to know those things. But I'm just curious, Krista and Ed, did you ever get like scared or intimidated with these 5 people combing through all of your finances like this?
A little. It's funny because the one I was a little like just intimidated was Mark. I was like, man, he's gonna just rip me apart for my car. Be like, why do you drive this thing? And then I'm gonna be like, did you know how much I spent on gas per month? But no, everyone was so nice and lovely.
What did you learn from it? How did the case, I mean, you had your numbers. Did you have them all together before this, or did you have to put them together for the case study?
Well, Mark did ask for everything, but I'm already really well organized. I will give myself a little shout out there. So it was pretty easy gathering everything. He did ask me a couple of questions where I was like, I have to dig for this, but
I felt like his questions were a bit more comprehensive than what you usually do.
Yeah.
So it dug a little deeper, which was a good thing, obviously.
Yeah.
What did you learn from it? What were the blind spots? What you got right, what you weren't getting right? And how, since the case study, how have you changed your approach to your finances maybe? Or was it where you wanted to be and where you were going? Or did the case study change your trajectory?
It did change a few things for us. I learned that it wasn't as, I mean, I'm a very open person, but it was still scary. But afterwards, it definitely wasn't as scary as I thought it was going to be. Everyone at EconoMe was so lovely, even doing the case study and everything. So that was wonderful. I learned that we can cut back on housing some, which we did. We dropped housing by like $6,000 because we've done so much of our updates. And that was even with me adding a lawn service in. So I outsourced something for time, which was hard to do. But now that I did it, it's been amazing. And I'm really happy that I did because it stressed me a lot. But we cut back on housing some and we doubled the investments because I don't know what I was waiting for to start the 457. But that money from my job was just coming in and it was just burning through. We were just spending it. We were kind of going back into like previous spending habits when I first, because it was just so much excess money and I wasn't investing it. So the conference and everything that was said to me really pushed me to, okay, let's get this set up. And part of it is I work for a city. It's very slow how things happen for a city. So it was just me dragging my feet, setting it up. But now that it's set up and I chose who my plan is going to be through and how I'm invested, and he called me from the city and he was like, are you sure that you did this right? Because this weekly investment amount is great for a month. And I was like, I know. And he's like, you're going to have almost no paycheck left. And I was like, I know, you can process it. He's like, oh, I haven't come across this before.
Wow.
That's
Okay.
awesome. Tell us a little bit, just real quick. Does your portfolio look like? What are you investing in? Do you keep it simple? Do you follow the simple path to wealth? What are you
Yes,
doing?
it is so simple. I love Fidelity as my platform. So that's where everything for the most part is, like with the brokerage and everything. His 401k is just through his employer's account. But we switched the 401k. He was invested in target date funds, which I have nothing against. It's better than not investing. But the fees were just robbing us and we were not getting good returns. So we were able to switch that over to an S&P 500 fund, and we I forget what it's called. We reinvested everything over into it, and his 401k is doing fantastic now.
Okay, so you reallocated where his
Thank you.
existing money, and the new money that's going in is also going into the fund that you. Okay, awesome. Like, yeah, you guys did a lot of stuff since the case study.
But we keep everything simple because
there you go.
The Simple Path to Wealth is the first book I ever read, and I've gone back and read it so many times. It's the one that I recommend to everyone to start with. There's so many I could recommend, but I love that book. It's such a good, just easy roadmap. Like, it's just there. Like, it doesn't need to be hard. I think that's one of the things, people make it harder than it needs to be.
I completely agree. It was complicated when I first went down the rabbit hole, and I thought, oh, I'm going to beat the system. But no, join the system, follow the market. Are you guys, I was just curious, what's your risk tolerance? Are you 100% stocks or equities, or what are you doing with regards to risk tolerance and allocation there?
We're pretty close to 100% right now. We will probably in 3 to 5 years start leveling out and diversifying it some the closer we get, but we need that accumulation. But we both understand the ups and downs and the risk and when it goes down, because it's not an if, it's a when. When it goes down, we're just meh. Okay, let's watch it go back up. Like, it's not a panic, run, sell. We're in it for the long haul.
Remember the COVID years? It was like,
yeah. The COVID years were just like, we're putting money in and it's not changing, or it went down. But I mean, I'm sure many people in the community have seen things that we haven't, but we live by the buy and hold. Even my kids know this. And
awesome. Awesome. Well, you guys have shared so much with us, and you've taken us on your journey from the adversities growing up to getting together and realizing you need to do something different. And then finally you were on the upswing, and you guys are in a really good place right now. And we're just lucky we got you as our case study subject. It was just amazing. It was interesting. I think a lot of people learned from it. So is there anything else you guys would share as far as like tips for other late starters? We got a lot of them throughout your story, to be honest, but is there anything else that would be helpful? We're representing the late starters here, so we always like to get whatever nuggets of wisdom we can from our guest.
Don't think it's too late, because that's when you give up. And giving up is throwing in the towel and you're acting as if it's game over, you're done. And it's like, you're not done until you're dead. And I don't want to give up, because that also means I'm giving up on our dreams and our life and our future. And there are times where it's going to feel hopeless. And that is just part of anything in life. And I think we've all been in situations where it's just like, this sucks and it's so hard. It really is. Like, life is really hard sometimes, but you're not alone. And I hope that people can realize that, even if they aren't comfortable posting in such a public group, maybe they can find some close people from the group to talk to. But we're all here and we love cheering people on. Big wins, small wins, baby steps. Like, we all started somewhere. And we all feel like we started at the very end and we're the farthest behind. So just don't compare yourself to someone else's journey, because your journey is uniquely your own, and you'll live your best life making it your own unique one, not someone else's.
I think for me, not necessarily financially related, but I remember when I started my first university, I was 18 years old and went into my first class. And obviously outside of my own high school, it was a big state university, but like there was a guy in my math class and he had to be at least maybe 65, 70 years old. And like going to this university class, I was 18 years old. It was still basically a kid going to school. I was like, man, that's cool. Like, I don't know what his situation was. I never really got a chance to meet him or anything. I don't know how many times I saw him, but you know, here's this guy late in life and he's going back to university, doing something, bettering himself, changing his life. I don't know, something like that. But I was just like piggybacking along Krista's point, it's not too late to start. It can seem overwhelming sometimes. I know for me, even just taking that first step of going into it, of researching, of educating yourself, but then you see the world, the possibilities open up to you, you see what can happen. I think that is really a foundational kind of stuff. And then also thinking about just everyone deals with money. Maybe, I mean, I guess unless you're a super, super rich, someone who just doesn't have to even think about it at all. But I mean, it's just a part of life that we kind of deal with. And so, I mean, like to think that the issues that you have with it are isolating and it only affects you and no one else seems to be struggling with it just because no one else talks about it. I think it's definitely like when we've been able to open up, where we've been able to broaden our horizons and understand that. I remember this. I don't know if I've ever I was at work one day and I had gotten some money from the ATM. This is when we were still working through our debt stuff, and someone had left their receipt at the Chase ATM. I don't know if you remember
this.
And like, I just happened to pick it up. I was like, I thought it might have been mine, but it was someone else's that kind of left it in the Chase ATM. And it was like, oh my gosh, how does someone has this kind of money? Like, it wasn't even really looking back.
I think it was like $13,000 or $8,000.
Yeah, it wasn't even that much, but it was,
to us, it was mind-blowing.
To us, it was like, wow. And maybe looking back at it, that might have been a Kickstarter kind of among other things. But I mean, just being able to like expand your mind and just dream beyond what you're going through right now. And like, I think that gave us some hope. So.
Yeah. Every little step is a step and they all count.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
I mean, yours is a story of heroes to our audience. It's a story of love. It's a story of optimism. I mean, you guys are infectious. Your optimism is infectious. Your team approach is infectious. I know you're going to, I mean, this is your first podcast. Let's tell everybody. You are willing to try new things. You are willing to be transparent. You guys are examples for everybody when it comes to approaching life and finances. And I want to thank you, as does Jackie, I think, from the bottom of our hearts, for joining us today and talking to our audience.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much. Hopefully this was a good first experience.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
Appreciate
All
it.
right. Awesome. Okay, guys.
Well, we're going to have to check in with you in a year or 2 years, because this podcast will keep going, and find out where you are on your journey. I think that would be a lot of fun.
That would.
Sounds great.
All right. Thanks, guys. And we'll see you next time on Catching Up to Fi.
So, Bill, as you know, we cannot do this show without our amazing staff and the people that help us put this on. So our social media is Diana Falk, our editor, Fritz Bassard, and show notes are done by Sarah von Sternberg. We love them and they keep us going.
Yeah, I mean, this show wouldn't have the quality it has without our folks, our peeps. And we'd also like to give you a few calls to action for the show. We love our community, and we hope you love us back. If you want to support the show and what we're doing, you can do that at Buy Me a Coffee, which is a platform that allows you to virtually say thank you if you get value from our content. The link is in the show notes, or you can head over to our website at catchinguptofy.com and click on the Support the Podcast tab at the top right. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Catching Up to Fi. We would appreciate it if you could leave us a 5-star review so that our message can reach others.
While we are financial educators, and I'm a financial professional that loves to teach, our content is for general education and information purposes only. We are not providing financial, legal, or tax advice. Always do your own research or consult a professional before making important decisions.
We'll see you next time on Catching Up to Fi.